A long time ago, on the edge of an old forest, there lived a woodcutter with his wife and a little daughter. In the forest, it was very cold. So the little girl's mother stitched her a pretty Red Riding Hood. The little girl loved the riding hood so much that she wore it wherever she went. Soon, everyone began calling her Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood's mother and father let her play in the forest, but her mother often said to her, "Don't go too deep in the forest, my child, for there are many dangerous animals just waiting to eat you up." Little Red Riding Hood had a grandmother who lived on the other side of the forest. Little Red Riding Hood would eagerly wait for a weekly visit to her grandmother's house. Little Red Riding Hood would ask her father to take her through the forest on his horse. One day, while Little Red Riding Hood was playing in the forest, an old woodcutter came running to see her. He was her father's friend. The old woodcutter came up to her and said, "Hurry, little one, go and tell your father and mother that your grandmother is very ill." She ran in to tell her mother the sad news. Little Red Riding Hood's mother said, "We have to send these medicines to your grandmother at once, but your father is away cutting woods. What shall we do?" Little Red Riding Hood said, "Mother, I'll go to Grandma's house. She will be glad to see me." So Little Red Riding Hood's mother put the medicines in a basket Little Red Riding Hood ran out of her cottage and headed for her grandmother's cottage. On the way, Little Red Riding Hood stopped and said to herself, "If I go around the forest, it will take a long time to reach Grandma's house. If I go through the forest, I'll get faster and I'll be able to give Grandma her medicine." Her heart beat fast as she ran through the tall, dark trees and stones in the forest. A wicked old wolf spotted her. He said to himself, "Ah, today is my lucky day. That little girl is all alone in the forest. She would make a tasty meal." The wicked old wolf took another path and ran ahead of Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood had never seen the wolf before. So, although she was afraid, she stopped and said, "Good day, sir." The wolf was surprised. He said, "Ah, hello, little girl. Where are you going?" "I'm going to my grandmother's cottage. She's ill and needs some medicine." The wicked wolf thought to himself, "Ah, it's truly a lucky day for me. I'll eat up the grandmother and then I'll eat this tasty little girl. Go, go, you must hurry and get the medicines to her." She ran away towards her grandma's cottage. The wicked wolf ran through a shortcut in the forest and reached grandma's cottage. Quietly, he opened the door and entered the cottage. The wolf found Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother sleeping in her bed. He was so hungry that he pounced on her and swallowed her in one gulp. The cunning wolf knew that if he pounced on Little Red Riding Hood, she would scream and alert the woodcutters nearby. So he decided to trick Little Red Riding Hood. He dressed up in a grandma's clothes and put on Granny's cap and lay down in her bed. Little Red Riding Hood finally reached Grandma's cottage. There was only a little candle in the bedroom, so Little Red Riding Hood found it difficult to see. She ran inside and shouted, "Grandma, Grandma, how are you? I brought your medicines, don't worry." She thought that the wolf was a grandmother. The wolf tried to make it sound like an old lady as he said, "Thank you for coming, my child. Put down your basket and come sit by my side." "Oh, Grandma, your voice sounds so different. You must be so ill. Why don't you take the medicines that Mother has sent for you?" The wolf replied, "Oh, don't worry, my child. I'll get better if you just hold my hand." Little Red Riding Hood smiled and looked closely into her grandmother's face. "Grandma, Grandma, what big eyes you have!" The wolf quickly replied, "Better to see you, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood looked closer and said, "Grandma, what big ears you have!" The wolf replied, "The better to hear you, my dear." The Little Red Riding Hood said, "My goodness, Grandma, what big teeth you have! The better to eat you, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood ran out of the cottage, screaming, "Help me, help me!" Just then, Little Red Riding Hood's father came riding on his horse. Little Red Riding Hood's father killed the wicked wolf with one sweep of his axe. Just then, they heard a muffled sound coming from the wicked wolf's belly. They cut open the wolf's belly and found that Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother was still alive. Now, I hope you realize what happens when you talk to strangers, my child. Little Red Riding Hood promised not to talk to strangers or walk alone in the forest again, and they all lived happily ever after.
The Wolf and the 7 Little Goats. Once upon a time, a goat who had 7 young children had to go into the forest to fetch some food. So she called the little goats and said, "Dear children, I am going to the forest. Beware of the wolf. If it comes here, it will eat you. It may try to cheat you, but you will recognize it by its terrible voice and black paws." The little goats replied, "Don't worry, Mother. We will take care." After their mother left, there was a knock at the door. And somebody said, "Open the door, children. Your mother is here." Hearing the wolf's voice, the little goats replied, "You are not our mother, as a mother has a soft voice, and you have a terrible voice. You are the wolf." The wolf went away. And after some time came back again. It had eaten a piece of chalk to make its voice soft. Again, it knocked at the door and repeated the same words. The goats saw the paws of the wolf from the window and said, "No, you are not our mother. Our mother has white paws, but your paws are black. You are the wolf." Hearing this, the wolf went to a baker and, pretending to be injured, asked him to put some kneaded flour on its paws. Then it went to the miller and asked him to put some dry flour on its paws. Now its paws looked white. Again the wolf knocked at the same door and called out, "Children, your mother has got something nice for you." The wolf put its white paws on the windowsill. The little goats thought it to be the paws of their mother and opened the door. Immediately, the wolf entered the house. The goats were afraid and rushed in all directions to hide themselves. But the wolf found them and ate them up one by one. However, the wolf forgot to look for the youngest little goat that had hidden safely. After eating them, the wolf went back to the forest to sleep. When the mother goat came back, she was shocked at what she saw. Everything was scattered in the room, and there were no little goats. She called out to them one by one, and at last she called the youngest one. The youngest goat said, "I am here, mother, hidden in the clock." Then it came out from the clock and told its mother all about what had happened. Both of them cried over the death of the other little goats. Then they went to the forest and found the sleeping wolf. The mother goat noticed something moving inside the wolf's stomach. She exclaimed with surprise, "Oh my goodness! I think my children are still alive in the wolf's stomach." Immediately, the mother goat cut open the stomach of the sleeping wolf with a sharp knife. 6 of her children jumped out from the wolf's stomach one by one. Everyone was safe as the wolf had not chewed them. It had just swallowed them. They were very happy. Then the mother said, "Go and fetch stones to fill up the wolf's stomach before it wakes." The children obeyed their mother, and the mother goat quickly sewed up the wolf's stomach. The wolf was so deep in slumber that it did not move. When the wolf woke up, it felt thirsty. And it went to a nearby stream to quench its thirst. As it walked, the heavy stones made it feel uncomfortable as they were rolling inside its body. It started crying bitterly in pain. When the wolf reached the edge of the stream to drink water, because of the heavy stones, it found itself unable to balance. It fell into the stream and died. The mother goat and her 7 children were watching all this from their hiding place. As soon as they heard the cries of the drowning wolf, they yelled out with joy, "The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead!" After that, Mother Goat and the 7 little goats lived happily ever after. Sleeping Beauty. A long time ago, there lived a king and a queen. They were very sad as they had no children of their own. One day, the queen was sitting near a pond in the castle garden. Suddenly, a frog hopped onto a lily flower in front of her and said, "Your wish will be granted. Before a year has passed, a daughter will be born to you. Croak, croak." Her wish was granted, just like the frog said. A little girl was born to the king and queen. They were so happy that they ordered a grand feast to be held to celebrate the event. All their friends, relatives and the 12 fairies of the kingdom were invited. But there were in all 13 fairies in the kingdom. One fairy was not invited. Why? Because the king and queen considered number 13 to be an unlucky number. So the 13th fairy was not at all happy. She was very angry indeed. On the day of the celebration, all the guests had gathered in the king's palace with their gifts. The 12 fairies came with their special gifts for the baby girl. One fairy said, "I grant her good qualities." Another said, "I give her beauty." Another fairy gave her riches, another health, and so on. Now the little princess had all the gifts that every parent desires for his beloved child. Soon 11 fairies had given their gifts. As soon as the 12th fairy was going to give her gift, the hall door flew open, and the 13th fairy came in. She was angry at not being invited to the feast. She wanted to take her revenge. She said, "On her 15th birthday, the princess will prick her finger on a needle and die." Then, in a